For months and months, we've been begging and pleading, even with mainstream media outlets and Western governments, to condemn Israel's actions in Gaza, or at least tell the truth about what's going on in Gaza. And for months and months, we've been completely ignored or demonized. Yet all of a sudden, last week, a wave of condemnations came from mainstream media outlets towards Israel and its actions in Gaza. And only a few days ago, Western governments, such as the UK, Canada, and France, threatened sanctions against Israel for what it's doing in Gaza. This switch up has left many of us confused. And so, to unpack these developments, I'm joined today by British academic and author Dr. Azzam Tamimi. Dr. Azzam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, I'd like to start with the developments from the mainstream media. We saw months and months of atrocity propaganda of defense of what Israel's doing in Gaza. For example, the New York Times posted many lies over the last 18 months. Yet last week, or I think it was 2 weeks ago, they released a story or released an opinion piece titled "This Israeli government is not our ally." What caused this switch up from the New York Times and the subsequent wave of condemnations we saw from Western mainstream media outlets?
Well, I think these mainstream media have seen public opinion change and change in a manner they probably never thought they would see in support of the Palestinians rather than the Israelis. I mean, traditionally, public opinion in the West was under the was deceived to believe that the Israelis were actually the victims of the Arabs and the Muslims. Since the 7th of October and since this what Israel has been perpetrating of genocide in Gaza, I think an increasing number of people around the world, but specifically in the West, came to realize that there is a lot more to this tragedy. So people started digging for facts, for historical facts. They want to know the roots of the conflict. And they could see with their own eyes, even if the mainstream media didn't show much initially, but the parallel media outlets did show. People could see the atrocities perpetrated by the Israelis. And then they saw very clearly that it was the Israelis who were violating the ceasefire, who breached the agreement that was reached with Hamas. And they could hear Israeli government ministers boasting about ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza. And I think there is a limit to what the editors and the producers of mainstream media can tolerate, because their credibility was in jeopardy. People no longer trusted them, or some of them. Of course, they are not the same. I mean, there are varying levels of hypocrisy and lack of credibility. But I think this has become a main factor, to the extent that a few days ago, even the Financial Times published an editorial shaming Western governments for their silence over the genocide that is being perpetrated in Gaza. Now, the second factor, which is no less important, is that the Zionist project in Palestine is a Western project. And influential circles across the Western Hemisphere, especially in Western Europe and in the United States of America, started realizing that the current government in Israel, that is led by Netanyahu and that is composed of the most fanatical elements within Israeli society, is actually putting the Zionist project and the future of Israel in real jeopardy, endangering the existence of Israel. And of course, they'd be concerned about something they consider to be their own, because this is how it started. The whole idea of occupying Palestine to create a Jewish state was actually part of the solution proposed to the Jewish problem of Europe that became quite serious toward the end of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th century.
Why do you think that this particular time, after 18 months of continuous genocide, is the time when these mainstream media organizations decided they would open their eyes? And further to that, what do you think explains the fact that all of the mainstream media organizations that we saw came out with condemnations within days of each other?
Well, these Western mainstream media cannot continue to publish and broadcast reports and analysis that contradicts the public sentiment. As I explained earlier, there has been a shift in Western public opinion. And this Western sentiment has impacted on the position adopted by editorial boards and by producers across the Western hemisphere. I think the resilience of the Palestinian people, especially the people of Gaza, and their resistance to Israeli attempts to have them surrender and capitulate has been a source of admiration. People are admiring it, especially the young generation. Now Western governments, especially in the United States of America, are making enormous efforts, are exerting enormous efforts and spending so much money in order to suppress and silence students on campuses and people in various levels of society, and this is being reacted to, because this is going against all the values that the West claims to believe in: the value of freedom of speech, the value of supporting the oppressed, the value of standing by the victims of human rights violations, the values of democracy, etc. And the exposure of this double standard and this hypocrisy came together and brought about this effect on the mainstream media.
Moving on to the Western governments and their change in stance, the United Kingdom has for many months now claimed and maintained that Israel was not committing genocide in Gaza, and they have even aided Israel's efforts to destroy the Palestinians with their continuous British intelligence flights leaving from the airbase in Akrotiri in Cyprus. So my question is, after this many months of direct complicity, direct participation in Israel's genocide, what do you think is behind the UK's change in tune?
Well, clearly it's the change in public perception of what's going on in Palestine. It is scandalous. I mean, there have been an increasing number of MPs in the British Parliament who stand up and question the government and its ministers, and even accusing them of complicity with the war crimes that the Israelis are committing. I think British politicians, as well as politicians elsewhere in Europe and the United States of America, were hoping that this war would be over by now, and that some sort of settlement would be reached. And yet Israel is embarrassing all of them by insisting on repeating the same sort of procedures, the same sort of actions, uh, to no avail. The people of Gaza are still there. They are determined to remain in their homes. The Israelis now are starving them. They are using humanitarian aid as a weapon to subjugate them, and that is something that people on the basis of pure humanity cannot tolerate. And irrespective of the personal convictions of prime ministers or ministers in this government or that government, in a democracy, you have to be sensitive to what goes around you. And I think the crimes that Israel is committing in Gaza and now even in the West Bank uh, are not hidden anymore. People can see them live on television. They can see reports after reports detailing what's going on. And therefore, the British government had to make that change, or in tone, as well as even make threats to hopefully force Israel to change policy.
In line with the so-called change in tone that we've seen from the UK government, they have summoned the Israeli ambassador to the UK. They've paused so-called free trade talks with Israel, and along with Canada and France, they have threatened sanctions. Are these actions indeed an indicator of a real change in policy, or are they simply performative in order to placate the masses?
Well, any change in tone or in policy in favor of recognizing exactly what's going on in Gaza is welcome. So I welcome the declaration by the three governments of uh, Britain, Canada, and France. I welcome the change in the tone of in the speeches delivered by the Prime Minister and his Foreign Secretary in Parliament. This is all welcome. Yes, it's has come so late and at a very high cost. Not only the cost to the people of Gaza, but also the cost to the reputation of Britain as a democracy. Uh, but the fact that this is happening now is something that is welcome, and uh, more is needed, of course. Britain needs to stop completely any export of military hardware or arms to Israel. Britain needs to take stern position when it comes to products that are exported by Israel from West Bank settlements, illegal settlements that are, I'm talking here about international law, and those settlements, Jewish settlements that are in the West Bank and that produce products and export them to various parts of the world. I think the British government needs now to start taking steps, even with regard to acknowledging the right of the Palestinians to resist occupation and to live in freedom and dignity in their own land.
A delegation of EU diplomats as well as Arab diplomats made their way to Jenin today, and they were on tour, and supposedly they had coordinated with the Israeli authorities. Yet Israeli soldiers shot at them while they were walking around. Is this, in your opinion, a message that Israel is trying to send to European leaders?
I really don't know, but the Israelis later on issued a statement apologizing for what happened and trying to explain it in some claiming that the convoy took a different route to that originally agreed upon. Okay, the Israelis keep lying. I mean, this entire project is based on a lie after lie. They could again be lying. I think probably the Westerners in the convoy might have today acknowledged what the Palestinians have been saying all along, that these Zionists who occupy Palestine and who are persecuting the Palestinians have no respect for anybody else. They just don't recognize the humanity of others. And they've been inculcated, they've been educated into believing that God gave them a license to dispossess the Palestinians, to torment them, to persecute them, and to do to whoever supports the Palestinians whatever they deem fit. At the most probably, they recognized the members of the convoy as sympathetic or as supporters of the Palestinians, and they fired those shots. Clearly, that convoy did not pose any danger to anybody. Did not pose any danger to the Israeli soldiers who were at a short distance from where that convoy was going. But yet, it's the arrogance of the colonialists, those who come and invade other people and occupy their land. We saw this in Vietnam, we saw it in Algeria, we saw it in South Africa, we saw it in Iraq, we saw it in Afghanistan. It's just the same story, because they feel they are so empowered, they are so powerful, they can do whatever they like. They are so arrogant that they fire on them. I mean, the history of the mandate in Palestine is full of stories of Jewish gangsters hunting down British officers, and the bombing of the King David Hotel. So many British staff and officers were killed during that attack. The attack on the ship Liberty, the American, although the Americans are the allies of the Israelis, this mindset, the Zionist mindset, is a very dangerous mindset, and its danger extends to all humanity.
Speaking of Zionist mindsets, yesterday, Yer Golan, the former deputy IDF chief of staff, made a statement which caused a lot of controversy within the Zionist ecosphere, so to speak. He said that Israel is killing babies as a hobby, and many Zionists, called him out, and they said that he was a traitor, etc. However, he also said that he believed that the Israeli soldiers, those who were committing the atrocities on the ground, were heroes. So it seems like there's a bit of a disconnect in how Zionists view themselves and view each other. What do you think this rhetoric and the conversations around it are signifying?
Well, there is a group of people in Israel today who are fearful of the repercussions of this war on Gaza, definitely. And we've heard from time to time statements made by people, whether in politics or in the army. There are much fewer people in Israel who wake up and realize that Zionism is a real threat to themselves as Jews as well as to the world. And these are still very few in number, and many of them choose to leave Israel and live elsewhere around the world. Now, the general you're referring to in particular, I don't know him personally. I only heard the statement attributed to him in the media. But I assume that he is concerned about Israel's reputation and the reputation of its soldiers.
Well, Dr. Azzam, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.